Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to get started with our next panel. Please take your seat. Panelists, if you could please take the stage. Welcome to the next industry panel here at HollyShorts, titled Agents and Managers. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? All right. We're about to get started in just a second. When we get started with the panel, when we get to the Q&A section, please raise your hand. Our moderator will direct our assistants to actually bring the mic over to you. Please do not shout out any questions, and we're going to keep with one question per guest to make sure that everybody can have an opportunity as much as possible. No questions? Okay, all right, I'll quit. So no questions, but bombard Jalen at the end with every single question that you have. All right, here we go. Here is Agents Managers with Jalen.
Thank you, sir. Throw my
Good
phone.
instincts there, man.
You see that catch? All right, let me put this on. I know you were. Thank you, everybody, for being here. A round of applause real quick for HollyShorts. 21 years. It's crazy. I'm only a year older than the anniversary. It's nuts. Welcome to our lovely panel and guests. Thank you guys and Miss for being here. I want to introduce everybody, and let's start with on the end. This is Mr. Steven Adams.
Hello, hello.
Manager, producer, managing partner at Alta Global Media, uncle to my kids, all the other.
HollyShorts board chair.
HollyShorts board chair. I mean, look, you have many titles, and we can't take an hour announcing them all, Steven. So let's just stick with that one right now, please. We have Mr. Zach Cox, literary agent, Circle of Confusion. Manager, sorry. Hey, dude, I'm reading off the manager. Apologies. Boss man and a 49er fan and an Ace fan. Go Bay Area. All these LA fans are like, shh, don't say that. Mr. Alex Shikarshian, producer, attorney, educator, founder of ASM Management. Mr. Babakar Dean, probably the coolest name on the panel, I must say. Babakar, agent, Paradigm Talent Agency. We'll get into more about your whole background. And then we have Miss Ashley Calloway, representative from Color Creative Issa Rae's company. All right. Here we go. Let's jump right in. I wanted to start off today with one question, kind of break the ice, and something that's fun. So my question to all of you, and then we can start with you, and then work our way down. What is the weirdest or most unexpected way you've ever found a client or landed a project?
Wow.
Yeah. Welcome to Jalen Moore's world. Yeah.
I mean, I would say unexpected could be like just like a general that I put a client on during the height of the pandemic, like led to a staffing job like literally 2.5 years later. So I think that is unexpected, where you're like, every general, you're like, oh, I hope something comes of this, please, Lord Jesus. And then 2.5 years later it did. So I would say that's my example.
That's patience.
Yes.
Amazing.
One of my favorites is the first spec I ever sold was written by a gentleman who came to me from an assistant at a different management company. He was so disillusioned with the business, did not particularly like his bosses, that instead of sending the script that he read that he loved to them, he sent it to me. I would have never expected somebody at a rival to send it to me.
Mr. Babakar?
In my case, it was a funny thing. I was an assistant in 2007, 2008 at Icon, which is Mel Gibson's production company, which was also a distributor in England and Australia at the time, and an international sales company that was based out of the offices in LA, Santa Monica, and in London. And I was working for the head of sales at the time, and Mel had this passion project called The Professor and the Madman that he'd been trying to do for a long time, which was a project that Luc Besson had originally brought to him a decade before, and that he had been trying to put together. And a few years later, at my next job, I was catching up with Mel's assistant, and I was like, what is going on with this Mel project? And he's like, I don't know, we haven't been able to figure it out. And I was able to set it up when I was at Voltage working for Nicolas Chartier, try to get it made there. And it kind of came out completely random, be like, what is Mel doing with this great script that he's been attached to for years? And he was like, take it. You might as well be lucky enough. So very difficult production. A lot of issues done with the movie, but it was Mel, it was Sean Penn, it was Ewan Crawford. It was a great cast. It was really like a gorgeous script, and just something that came out of like conversation, just me remembering a script that I had read at this point like 4 years before. So you just never know.
Mr. Alex?
Okay, so mine is I was at an event, and at the time in 2014, I was one of the first talent managers to represent influencers. I had this female client, Catherine Webb. She was on Twitter. She became famous from a football game, and because of that, I was like kind of like taking a look at Vine in 2014. I was introduced to that app, and I knew who all the Viners were. And I went to this event, and I brought like the CEO of Google at the time, Eric Schmidt, and everyone beelined it to us to talk to Eric because he's the CEO of Google. Everyone wants to like talk to him. They're lining up, and I see Jake and Logan Paul, who at the time Jake was like number 50 or something on Vine, and I beelined it to him, and I was like, "Hey, I grabbed one of my friends who was an agent at the time. I was like, we have to represent those kids." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "They're on Vine." She's like, "What's Vine?" So yeah, like we beelined it to that direction, and that was when I signed him when he first started. So it was unexpected.
Wow. Who are these kids in Vine? Jeez.
Now,
My gosh. Mr. Adams?
well, I think my first client came to me. It just unusually, I'd met this actor, Roger Guenveur-Smith, through Lawrence Fishburne on a set of a movie. And I started I was running a theater company in Hollywood, which everybody thought was crazy because they're like, why are you doing theater in Hollywood? And I'm like, because I want to learn how to work with writers and I want to learn how to develop an idea from a concept to the page and from the page to the stage and then learn how to produce in that way and kind of come with some momentum and confidence. So I had my own plan and I wound up producing a show for a comedy trio. And one night, this actor walked in and said, "I've had my eye on you for a while, and we need to work together. And here are the plays that I'm doing." And 30 years later, here we are, still working together.
Wow. It's great.
And I'm still 21.
I know. All right, so let's jump in on this because I know some of you audience members have spoken to me and you're like, this is a good question. And it really is. Finding and choosing new clients, especially given in today's market, right? I'm sure, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago was a different game. So finding and choosing new clients, how do you discover and decide to represent new clients today?
Well, anyway. All right, well,
Yeah.
for me, it's always instinct. You've always got to have like a strong reaction to someone's talent, and you hope that they have this same feeling about you. There's a belief that the investment you're making, because I think people often forget that there's only so much time in any given human life, right? And if you're going to dedicate that to another person or that it needs to mean something. And I think sometimes people don't necessarily enter those relationships with that kind of clarity, that you should go with the intention of being with that person a long time and understanding the investment they're making. So I look at ethics, I look at work ethic as well. I look at talent, and they come from different places. People usually kind of know your taste profile and refer people to you. I like an entrepreneurial spirit because I've always been a manager producer, even before that was kind of a thing. I think people need to create their own ways, especially now, as you're saying. Like the whole system that we were trained in is essentially either asleep or falling apart, or in some kind of existential crisis because of AI, and I just feel like the people that are here at this festival, for example, are tackling those issues and like really meaningfully learning how to use AI as a storytelling tool as opposed to running from it and being afraid of it because it ain't going anywhere. So I look at all those things as qualities where I want to invest myself in somebody else.
Um, I would say, I think for me, being on, specifically speaking on the lit side, a lot of it is the material. I like to read great material, but I like to like when I look at a writer that I'm considering, I like to read a lot of material. I think the thing about the people that forget nowadays is like you can't just have one pilot and one feature script. I think true writers, they're specking things. They're using their time, which of course we want writers to get paid for their time, but before you're really at that step, you got to be writing. And so I'm always asking, like, okay, if you say you like comedy and drama and sci-fi on the feature side, like, do you have something that speaks to those interests? So for me, it's always, I think the material always will speak for itself. Like, it is the entry point is very hard, but I think everyone can speak for a good script will break through, and somebody will get their eyes on it and be like, wow, I have to do this. There's scripts that I'm getting for a director client of mine that are from younger writers, but it's coming through managers, it's coming through the agency system because it's so good. And so I think that's just like something that you really hone in on, is having a lot of material to speak to your voice. That's really important for me, because I'm like, I can't just go sell one thing, especially if you tell me, hey, I would love to staff in these areas, I would love to do this, that. I have to be able, Hollywood is so unfortunately specific to, like, well, you want to be a sci-fi person, what can you do with sci-fi, right? Which makes sense to a certain degree, but people can switch over and do other things, right? But I think if you're a newer writer, you should have samples in the things that interest you, and that gives a manager or an agent a good ability to see, oh, who are you as the breadth of who you are as a writer.
And do you need those submissions to come from a manager or agent, or like if somebody had a great script, can they email it to you?
Yeah, I would say it is hard because you want it to be referral based. But I think that, like, I've gotten a lot of great scripts from producers that I know, independent producers as well, not just people that are at big companies, but someone that says, hey, this script is really good. This is a great writer. You should at least meet them. And so if it's that good, and I'm like, okay, I would probably maybe do a general if I had the time. But it is always good to have some type of touch point to someone like us before you're just like, hey, read my script. You kind of need that cosign in a way, that just helps us sift through the literally laundry list of reading that we have every week.
This is why I'm so insistent that young writers, this is particular to the lit people, join writer groups. Because for me, and probably everybody on this panel, I have to discern what I read and when. So if it comes from a studio executive, a producer, an agent, that's going towards the top. If it's just, oh, I have a friend, everybody's got a friend or a grandma or a cousin, like everybody's a screenwriter that you meet in the world. I was once on a cruise once, and it was the worst experience of my life. I got pitched 5,000 movie ideas. But back to the point, very simple. The ones that come from writers, especially clients, for me personally, top of the list. I don't think anybody's harder on writers than other writers. So if one of my clients took the time to say, you should take the time out of your day that could be spent on me to read this, top of the pile every time.
Next time you're on a cruise, just tell people you're a janitor, bro.
I just say I'm in sales now. I literally just say I'm in sales.
Locked at sea.
That was the first year. I didn't know better. My brother looked at me and he was like, don't ever tell people what you do ever again.
No, but I agree with everything they said. It's a lot of it is, I come from the production world, right, and running acquisition and development for producers, film finance, and international sales companies. And I've been an agent for 3 years and a half, and I work in the indie space and with writers and directors in motion picture. So a lot of times my first clients were like some of them that I've already worked with in the past, and their managers would come up and be like, hey, by the way, he doesn't have an agent. Would you be interested in doing that role for them? Sometimes it's because I've worked with other clients at the agency already or tried to set up things, and they're like, my client already has a relationship with you because you developed stuff with them for the years. Why don't you join the team? Or I was a fan of the work of a TV person or whatever. A lot of it is also the relationship we have with the managers, that we always respect their taste. So when they reach out, like, hey, you should really check out this material. Would you be interested? That's always going to be top of the pile. And for me, looking at the business and the contraction of the business in the past few years, it's really been about, okay, is this writer going to be able to break into the studio system and the streamer system in the next couple of years? And a lot of times, you see a spec sale going out and it's sold by, an agency or a management company or something. And you're like, oh, like it's not an overnight success. I mean, that's person I've been writing for 7 years, spec scripts with action, thriller, sci-fi, let's say. And for all these years, they've been adding a lot of general meetings. Some of them got set up as studios, didn't get made, but they got fans all over town. They ended up in a blacklist a couple of times, like maybe 3 years ago, last year. And all of a sudden, for some reason, that one spec is the one that breaks through. And everybody's like, oh, I've always loved that writer. And because it's already been in the system, they can go to their boss because people are very risk averse. So they can go to their boss and say, "Hey, like you remember that writer? He's been in the blacklist a few times. You've worked with Disney, or you worked with that producer and that producer. Everybody's excited about it. The boss can read it over the weekend, and that's also like the problem right now in the business with the contraction and people being very risk averse. You kind of need to have sort of like that body of work behind you to be able to work in the system. And then it's also just about you watch something on TV, and you're like, oh, I really love who's the writer of that, who's the director of that, and you try to reach out to the person if they're international or foreign. You try to reach out to the agents in London or another country or anything like that. Or you read an article that said that Zach is going to have a client that's going to have something announced, and we'll call him and say, hey, like, can we read? It sounds great. And he's going to say, yeah, my phone has been ringing all day. Every agency wants to be my client. Get in line. But, it's like, will you give us time of the day and a shot at it for a meeting? And then it's up to us to prove that, that maybe we can be a better fit for them. But I had a thing that happened a couple of years ago. There was this French movie on Netflix called AKA that was directed by this French director called Morgan Delibert. And AKA was a $5 million action movie that ended up in the top 10 Netflix worldwide that year. It got like 120 million hours of views. It was the only non-English speaking movie. And it was a manager that reached out to me. It was like, have you seen this French movie? I was like, yeah, it's great. What about it? Like, well, we should try to fucking sign this guy. Like, I grew up in France. He's like, can't you do something about this? And it turned out, luckily, I'd met the producer a year before. So I WhatsApped the guy, like, hey, like, can you get me in touch with Morgan? He's like, yeah, Morgan's on vacation right now in the island somewhere. Here's his cell phone. And because of that, we were able to be the first in line to meet him and get him before some of the bigger agencies, and we ended up being able to sign him. So sometimes also like just being a fan and seeing what's out there and trying to figure out a way to the talent. And then it's up to you and your colleagues and the department and the agency to convince them to work with you.
When I look at all of my most successful clients, the one thing that I see that they all have in common is an intense, thank you, I'm back, is an intense work ethic. But when you meet someone for the first time, you can't necessarily tell their work ethic. People don't wear that on a sleeve. Everyone, when you meet them for the first time, they're presenting their most ambitious, their most self-determined self. But that being said, when I look back at the jobs I've had, I helped my sister cast a feature once, and I've also been a judge of this very festival several times. And the thing that helps me the most was those roles, because when I sit there and I watch short after short, or read script after script, or watch an actor's reel after an actor's reel, or an audition even after an audition, the thing that I noticed is that a lot of times people turn in the same homework assignment. And what I mean by that is they think this is what people want to watch. They think this is what I want to read. The things that wake me up are people who actually don't do that. They're creative. And that's the thing that draws me to people when I'm first signing someone. Are you going to wake me up? So that's kind of my ethos when I look for new talent. Is someone going to wake me up? Do they wake me up? Do they grab my attention? And from there, I hope they have the work ethic that all of them swear they do, because that is the recipe in my opinion.
It's a long haul. I was going to say, to your point, it's very interesting how often I used to get calls from people saying, well, what are they looking for? And I was like, if they knew what they were looking for, they just get it.
Right.
You just need to create what you know how to create and not worry about what somebody wants, because they don't know. They can't. If they could find it, they'd identify it and they'd put a ring on it right away. So I think it's important for creatives to realize that if somebody puts you up to bat, you just take the swing and you move on from it, because it's easy, and it's easier said than done. But that is the only way to really be successful psychologically and emotionally in the long haul that we're all on.
All great points. Thank you. I have a question real quick to the audience here. By show of hands, how many of you are producers? Everyone's a producer. I love it. How many of you are actors? Okay. Directors? Filmmakers? Okay. Dancers? Okay. All right.
Which one are the ones that I saw at that strip club last night? Okay.
You were in the Jumbo Clown Room? How dare you?
know it. Have to relax after this.
No, I was just asking because this was going to help gauge some of the questions I was going to ask. So now I know exactly who's sitting in this room. Thank you. Okay, so here's something that I've been asked a lot in my world, and I would love to hear y'all's answers. So balancing quotes versus market reality. Okay. Um, this pertains mainly to like the indie filmmakers. The studios are always going to pay that big paycheck, right? So you have a client that's worth like 10 million a movie, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, my indie budget, that's a great story for your client, is a $5 million movie. But we got a great cast, we got a great director, da 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 da. So my question is, how do you navigate the balance between the quotes that you believe your clients deserve or they've been paid to the realities of today's market, given if it's not like a big IP?
Chris Rock had a great bit about men only being as faithful as their options. That would be my short answer is if you have a lot of options.
That was so cynical.
It's Chris Rock. He's great. But it's great. That would be if Netflix and Amazon and Warner Brothers and Universal are throwing things at your client, you have a lot more leverage. There are people who have half a dozen films or more maybe that are struggling to find work. Anytime, especially right now, you have to get more creative with those people. And so, yes, you may take a hit on the upfront money, but also you will experience a lot of money in the back end in great success, right? That's the thing is like in the studio system, it's very hard to ever see a check for profits, right? So there is a balance there, but there's passion projects. Maybe somebody is in demand at the studios and streamers, but this is just, they have to tell this story. It's personal to them. It means a lot. That's also another caveat. But I would say if somebody's making a lot and they want to keep making a lot, they're probably going to take that opportunity.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think there definitely there's like swim lanes. Like if you are a commercial director and to Zach's point, and you're getting those opportunities, you're gonna keep trending forward because I think what we've seen is a lot of directors that are in that world can then go and do their indie finally and go do their passion project. So I think that it's kind of just you take kind of what's important to you at the time or what's available to you at the time. I think there's some commercial directors that wish they could still do their indie, but they're kind of stuck in the studio system. So I think it's just the type of director that you are, but I think you should always strive to go do your indie and make it for the best budget that you can. And to Zach's point, the in success, the back end of it will be. And then also too, I feel like that first being able to do an indie movie, especially if you're a first time director, that is going to serve you so well in the ability to say to your manager, to your agent, hey, okay, now we can, or your managers can say to you, hey, we can take this now and say they've shot a feature, right? It was at this festival, it got distribution here, it was on Netflix, it did that. So that is a great chess piece also. Especially if you're doing it with financiers that people know, producers that people know, and it's a great leverage point to get into the studio system also.
Yeah, and I'll back everything that she just said. And it's true that if you're even a very successful writer, but you never got a shot at directing, you have a script that the studio might not make. An independent might say, I'll give you a shot at directing, but this is the number I can make it for. But because you already have your contacts as well, you might be able to get me one of these 10 actors that I can work with, so that gives them the opportunity, and then it can change somebody's career, And several times I've seen through the years, when I was working like on Global, even the Voltage, like a really hot spec, and we're telling the writer, like, look, like a studio is going to buy this, but they'll never make it. Whereas if you go to one of the bigger top 10 independent companies, this is something that they can make, and they have an incentive to make it because they don't get paid really until they deliver the movie and the distributors pay them back, right? So they need to keep making movies all year and sell them and collect on that to actually like keep their business flowing. And so they have more opportunity there. And sometimes the writers are like, no, I'm going to take that big paycheck or whatever. And then 8 years later, you sit down with them. They are now extremely successful. They are superly highly paid. They haven't had one movie come out, right? And you're like, what happened to that script that you wrote like 10 years ago? And they're like, oh, now it's at this studio. Are you interested? There's only like $400,000 against it. And like, yeah, my boss is not going to go for that, And it's like, so it's also picking what are your priorities out there. But it's true that sometimes it is worth going the independent route, sometimes not. and sometimes independents will give you opportunities to do the kind of material and kind of work that you wouldn't get at a studio. Because let's say you're in a certain lane, and then you're like, well, we're going to give you an opportunity in this lane. Like if we work at Voltage, like we did a drama with Jerry Butler. Like Jerry was never offered this kind of material, so he took a pay cut. We were like, we can make this movie at this budget, and he was like, love this, let's go. And he was super serious, super prepared, lovely, super pro, and for him, it was a great opportunity as well. Everybody won in that context.
Was his pay cut from 20 million to 19?
Well, I'm not gonna say what it was, but like
Jerry don't play.
Yeah,
He's his own lawyer.
yeah,
I'm just curious, asking for a friend.
I think he got paid handsomely for the project, but it also showed a different side of him that was not being shown out there, and I think it probably helped for the rest of his career.
I have a client, Christopher Scott. He's like the best choreographer in the world. He just got off of Wicked, and he's doing Wicked for good. He's been working with John Chu, the famous director, for decades. That relationship has been one of the most beautiful relationships in Hollywood that I've been able to witness. John has had his mindset to work on studio projects, and a lot of times Chris will get presented with a lot of indies and whatnot, and John and him are of this mindset where they don't actually want to settle. They want to do the studio projects. They want the big budgets because they help Crazy Rich Asians become what it is with the studio's backing. And had he kind of caved and made it the indie route, it might have not had the significance it did today. But that being said, it's nice to be a John Chu and Christopher Scott. Not everyone gets that opportunity to wait. There is power in no. I will say that a lot of my clients, whether it's actors who start saying no to the co-stars and they start getting guest stars and recurrings, or if it's an influencer who says no to the $1,000 FabFitFun box ad that they are doing, and now they're starting getting $20,000, $50,000 deals. There is this kind of air about when you yourself proclaim that you're worth more. I do think that sometimes doors open to you that they didn't when you were kind of limiting yourself. That being said, everything what the panel just said is right on. There's a lot of opportunities that you miss when you're just stuck in that zone as well. So being open to collaborating with people, being open to working on something, even if it's free. Sometimes I've seen many of my clients work on free things, and I don't like that. But it has led to things. 15% of nothing. To be fair, you get a 10%. But to be fair, I get it does kind of provide value down the road where we do see it. And I do ask them to keep mind of that. Like, okay, let's do this. And if it pays off, we could consider doing it again. And I've seen it pay off.
I think it's important. I think it's important because we have to remember that you can get so caught up in the financial aspect of it and the vaulting of. You've seen people's careers destroyed by only being commercial.
Correct.
And having to reinvent themselves, humbling themselves, going back to the world that we're talking about. So I guess from the point of view of the audience here, I would say that if I were to take a call from someone, I want them to be clear, honest, precise about what they actually have. I think the biggest thing that we find when we get these kinds of offers is that there's a lot of dishonesty and trying to disguise it as something that it isn't when it's quite clear.
Dishonesty in Hollywood, Stephen? Come on.
Well, I'm saying like 5 questions in, you already know what the fucking story is. So don't bullshit me. I already know what's going on. I can smell it before I pick up the phone. But the point is that if you're honest and clear, the opportunity, like you said, might be on the back end. It may be a way for you to become a producer if you're an actor. There are other considerations that can help build up a label. There are ways to do things. I remember there was a film. This is quite some time ago. A young filmmaker who did a film, I think it was called Brighton Beach, and he offered this role to Vanessa Redgrave late in her career, and she had one scene, and she played the mother of this character who comes in, they have a disagreement, they fight bitterly, and then she starts to choke, and then she dies. And her scene was only a few minutes, but it colored the rest of the film, and she wound up getting an Oscar nomination for it. So, I mean, the opportunity can just sometimes be in the smallest things. So we have to be careful not to be so commercially minded that we miss art.
I love that. How are we doing on time back there? Just curious. Are we good? Okay, because I want to make sure I do have time for the audience. I'm sure they have a lot of questions. All right. Well, let me jump into one more question here. So all of you individually with your own companies and companies you work with. I guess right now and just what's going on, I know that a lot of studios are looking for specific IPs. Everybody wants, a book, Hot Wheels. Let's make a movie about Hot Wheels. Yeah, John Chu. Well, John Chu is awesome, and I met him before. He's a very kind human being. By the way, he's a Bay Area boy too, so represent. So you have your clients, or you have new clients you're signing, right? What's one bold move I would say that you will make, non-traditional? Because I like to ask people these questions and then the traditional submissions to get your client's material over the line for a studio to actually read it and or, possibly green light it. Non-big IP, not Barbie.
You know, I mean, well, I think that is a lot of times based on relationships that we have. Um, I definitely make it a point to have my people at each place to where I know I can get something through. If it is a spec script or I work on the talent side as well. So if it's something that I know is casting, I'm calling the studio, the producer, and all that. So I think it's really like leaning on my relationships at that point to be thinking out the box as to how to get something done. We have a client that just that's starring in a Hulu show that's about to start filming, and literally like we were just aggressive, on all ends. So I think it's just your relationships. You gotta, like, if you have something that you're trying to achieve and sell and get through the door, it's about the relationships that we have. And I think that's a big part of, if you engage in a relationship with the manager or an agent, it's making sure that they have the relationships on their end to help get the things and move things along. Not everything's going to be a yes, but I'm always about small wins. Like, because this business is so hard and there's so many scripts that executives are reading, getting a pitch, like, those are small wins, so yeah, I think I would say relationships, and just like me being super aggressive on them and being like, you have to read this, you just heard a pitch from my client. And I'm the type of person, I don't really care how high up they are. If we've met before and you've heard my client, and thankfully I've had clients that have pitched all the major studios, to the top to the bottom. So I'm just like, I'm picking up the phone.
Note to self: never tell Ashley no.
Like, no, none of us like
Yes,
no.
ma'am.
We
No,
gotta.
no.
These boys I can handle. I'm not saying no to you. No.
I have a crazy story because I had a young writer that was sent to me by a company that I do a lot of business with, a law firm Ramo Law. And I love them because they also have this development side of their company for film and television. And I loved this script. I was like, this is amazing. It was a great dystopian sci-fi feature. And it was sent to me in 2018. The years are important because of the way the story ends. And I sent it out to all these people, and they were like, this is amazing. Who is he? And I'm like, his name's on the cover page. They're like, but who is he? I'm like, I know what you're saying, but I'm trying to ignore this. What they meant was, this person is not established. This is not established IP. It's not based on anything. So after the 10th, like, I love this, but I was like, let me just stop and meditate on what I want to do next. And it came to me. I'm like, this is science fiction. We're going to turn it into a graphic novel. And so we spent the most of 2019 turning into a graphic novel, and we found illustrators in Malaysia and Vietnam, and gave it the very specific look that we wanted, with an emphasis on blue because it was called Blue Fall. And then I started, I said, we built up the social media presence. So much so that when we started introducing the characters, people started calling me saying, I want to interview this writer. I mean, we hadn't even published the thing yet. So we had interviews with him, and then we published the book and put it on Amazon. And then we kept pushing it, and I'd contacted 50 bookstores around comic book stores around the country and said, would you carry? Yeah, we self-publish. And so they said, yeah, we'll carry it. So I put 20 copies in, like 1,000 copies in 50 stores. And then he was doing book signings. And so we're building, and then it started growing. And it became the number one best-selling graphic novel on Amazon. I mean, the numbers weren't that huge, but it was the number one. But that became my sales pitch. Would you like to see the number one best-selling graphic novel? Yes. And some of the same.
Did you go back to the same people?
That's so smart.
And they're like, I've never seen it.
Listen,
I love this IP.
don't we all ignore unpleasant news. Just it didn't happen.
Good.
They're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing! Thank you for sending this to me." Because then I could send a PDF of the graphic novel, and there is a script adaptation if you'd like to see it. And so they're like, "Oh my god, I'd love to read that."
That's crazy. Like, there's a title I remember kind of like this, but this is so different.
This is so different.
Oh, gee.
But anyway, we wound up getting a fucking
Yeah.
deal. We got a deal for it, and then we moved into 2020.
Nice.
And what happened was that nobody wanted dystopian material, so the deal fell apart. However, as you said about little wins, I've learned how to do this. I've done it again. Now I have a development deal for Netflix with another series that's set on that we created into IP for an African subject matter. So I just keep on doing the same thing. I've learned how to do it, and
Nice.
you know,
That's great to hear.
anything if it's adaptable, just fucking do it, and you can sell it.
Before I open up to questions real quick, Mr. Alex, Mr. Babacar, anything else you want to add
Sure.
pertaining to that
Yeah.
topic?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's, sometimes it's working with your relationships and whatnot to get things over the finish line. Sometimes it's like fighting with the system, because I had one client, Nadine Crocker. She did a very personal project that she wrote. It was called Continue, and it was about her own survival of a suicide attempt. And it was a very personal topic, and she wanted to direct and star in it. And we championed this project. And when the powers that be come into your life and they say, "Hey, we're going to make this movie," they start saying things like, "Well, instead of you as the lead actress, we would like this list of people. Wouldn't this make the project better? Instead of you as the director, wouldn't these directors be better?" And to be honest, I think, as most reps do, we would probably encourage our clients to hear them out for the betterment of the project. However, in this instance, considering how important this topic was to her, she was like, "Alex, I know, I want this," and fighting that system to be able to have her make that feature, and now she's directing several other features from that, working with like Garrett Hedlund, some of the actors that it was on her dream board to work with. So sometimes it's fighting that system to allow them to have their vision while still having them hear you out, because I think it's always important when I give advice, when anyone here gives advice, that that we are heard. Never do we ever expect, or at least I don't expect, for you to have to listen to us. It's your life, it's your career, it's your choice, but we always want to feel heard because we've seen a lot of things, we know how things work to some extent. Ultimately, I'm there to support the talent, and sometimes that involves fighting the system, not necessarily even working with it.
That's refreshing to hear, by the way. And I think all of you, sorry, Babacar, just hearing so far from everyone that you're champions of your clients and that you are for people. There's a narrative out there sometimes that a lot of us feel if it's slow, it's like, my reps aren't doing anything. They're fired. But you're like, these reps are working hard for you and championing you, So it's nice to hear you guys talk about this and express how you are
It's
fighting for
funny
your
when you
clients.
mentioned that when things are quiet, that's when we're the busiest.
Yeah.
Because we're having to actually be the most creative to churn things out of almost nothing. Because this is a business of willpower, and so people don't always appreciate the fact that your rep may be quiet and they're not calling you. I mean, what is it's like, let's all talk about how quiet it is, or should I put my time on creating something? It's a much better use of time.
Yeah, the click yes is easy.
Yeah.
After that is the hard part.
No, and just to touch on what everyone said here, it is about relationships. I work at a big agency. Some of the people have been there for 20 years. They've known a lot of these executives for 20 years since they were assistants or now running studios or whatever. So sometimes I'm like, who is the person that can make the right call? And I will wait until literally we have used everything, and then we're like, we need somebody to call that person and say, hey, like all your executives love this person. What is going on? Like, why aren't you going for my client? I guarantee you, like, you won't regret it. Take the meeting or whatever. And as reps or for like directors, it happens a lot sometimes where executives are going out to talent, or there's like an indie producer or at a studio or a producer or working with a studio. And it's like, we will then call the reps of the actor or people around, say, hey, like, I know like you might not know my client. You should see the movie. That person can really direct a great film. It's a great piece of material. Like if your client responds, please like get into them, get them in the room together. And I guarantee you my client will say your client in the film. Like, and a lot of it is like we are working with the producers and the creatives and pushing that. So it's not just just
Right.
being agenting, like making the deal and waiting on the producers and the exec to make it happen, because it's so difficult to get that boulder up the hill, especially right now. There's so little stuff getting made and financed that you have to all work together to push it and get it through the line. And the line of that actor, a lot of it is not just as easy as like, oh, I'm going to send a material, wait for a read and getting it. That's generally not how it's going to happen today. It's going to be managers making calls, directors making calls, producers and everybody working together.
Takes a village.
To get it. Yes, exactly.
Takes a village and everything in life. Let's open up to questions because I know you guys are eager to ask because I could talk all day to them. So let's start. How about right here in the front, and then we'll make our way to the back and around.
Hi everyone, how's it going? My name's Matt. I'm one of the filmmakers here. And my question is kind of broad-ish, I guess. It's about multi-hyphenates, and I know like everybody's a multi-hyphenate now. It's like, oh, I can do everything, but I've come up through the industry doing everything. Like my film here, that screen at Tribeca, like I'm writing, directing, producing, acting, doing it all. So my question is more so for the people who are like lit or like specifying certain things, how do you balance people, if you have any, that are sort of doing multiple things and supporting them? Because obviously, like from an acting front, you're submitting clients on Breakdowns Express, like that sort of thing, versus the writing and then the directing kind of coming in. So I'm just curious if that's something you're very honest with at the get-go, or I would hope with people coming in, as to like what your sort of bandwidth is or what you can specialize in, or if you bring someone else in on the team. Yeah, just kind of hoping you can touch a little bit about that.
That was a multi-hyphenate question too,
Yeah.
by the way.
I'll go. I'll go. Then Zach will go. I would say because you're all the things. I think leaning into the lit side would be helpful, and it will serve your acting side as well. I think. But I mean, also that just depends on what you love. Like, I'm not trying to tell you to do one over the other, but I have seen that people that focus on the lit side and kind of being a creator, you're able to create vehicles for yourself on the acting side. And then I would say, like, if you're able to get signed, like for how we work at Color Creative, we represent actors and actors that are multi hyphenates, but some that aren't, that are purely actors. And then obviously on the lit side. And so what we'll do is we'll team up. So if someone is more traditionally a director or writer, but they're like, hey, I have ambitions to act, and it's a little bit more of a developmental thing, and it's a little bit harder. But we would have someone join the team if someone felt passionate to say, oh, I believe in this person, I've seen their material, I would love to start pitching them to casting, submitting them for roles all over town, put them on breakdowns, be calling and tracking stuff for them. So it just depends on where you end up. But I think that if you lean into the creation of materials and worlds for yourself, you'll be able to continue being an actor. But I think, that's a meteor side of it.
To be very honest, like I don't get talent. I'm not out there, but I do rep people that have talent reps, right? So that would just be the conversation. And it's your power, right? If it's Ashley, I mean, right? Again, you do both, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I thought. Okay.
Dude, it's Danielle. What are you doing?
No, not
Oh,
the
it's
name.
Ashley.
I was
No,
like,
kidding.
Me and Zach are working together. I love
but I thought she
I
did
know
both.
who you are. That's why I'm peppering up.
But I knew she did. I was pretty sure she did both, which I don't, right? So I would tell you, hey, if somebody on the talent side wants to represent you, cool. But otherwise, I'm only representing you for lit. So I have clients that are repped at other management companies for acting. So it's just a case by case thing and who your rep is.
My niche is multi hyphenate. So I started 19 years ago on my own, and about 8 years in, I had all these major management companies kind of want to come and have me come in house. And one of them asked me a really interesting question, which is like, who are you as a manager? What's your voice? And I was like, as a manager, I need a voice. I didn't get that. And I went back and looked at my roster of clients, and I didn't realize, because at the time I was an attorney, I taught law, and I was a producer, and I was a talent manager. And I didn't realize until I looked at my roster that I had a red carpet host who was actually one of the first hosts for HollyShorts back 21 years ago, like maybe like closer to 19. But and then she wanted to be a producer and on-air talent. I had Jake Paul, who was an influencer who wanted to act at the time. I had a YouTuber who wanted to become a race car driver, and we figured that out. So, that was my that was my thing, is like, I listen to people. I've been very lucky to, and the reason why I do this is because I have witnessed a lot of people's dreams come true, and not in like that Hollywood, like, hey kid, I'll make your dream come true way. I just happen to be a part of the recipe. You know what I mean? Like, I just happen to be bear witness to a lot of dreams coming true. And the thing that I realize is that it takes me listening and connecting dots, because the racing world was one I had no experience in whatsoever, but it was a passion of hers. And she was a YouTube star. And we started with getting her a billboard on Sunset, because that was a dream of hers as well. And we did. And that was
How specific?
it was a very specific dream. Uh, yeah. Yeah, no, but like, I'm there. I definitely am not the reason why these things happen. I'm just a part of this recipe. And I think a lot of it is listening. And again, like 15 years ago, people were told you have to stick in your lane. You have to only do one thing. If you're a writer, you have to be a writer, and that's it. And there is some truth to people who just focus on one thing do really well. But some people aren't built like that. Some people excel juggling multiple things, and those are the people I guess I gravitate towards.
Love that. I mean, you literally are like Walt Disney now. It's great. Let's go. Let's go to questions very back next. Yeah, you. Yep, right there, very back. I know it feels mean in the back sometimes. There are questions. You're like, it's not a shit about it earlier. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much. It's been so helpful to hear your guidance and funny little quips. I am not repped, but I'm writing a book adaptation on spec for a producer who owns the rights. And now that the script is going to meetings and getting properly pitched, I've been told that it's a good time to start looking for representation, but I've also been told to wait until like conversations progress. So I guess at this juncture in my career where opportunities are coming up, how do you what is your best guidance in terms of navigating that process and the timing of it all?
Don't delay your dreams.
Yeah.
Go. Go. Even if somebody doesn't engage right away, that doesn't mean they won't later. Right. I think you're looking at it. Maybe not. Maybe I'm inferring this, but it seems like you're either or. Just go. There's like we all have said this, that no is just an opportunity. Like, even if you don't get the engagement, it will come in success. So just grind, network, have the producers make calls on your behalf. Like, I wouldn't wait personally. I don't see any benefit to waiting.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I think honestly, in this where you're at, like making sure that you have a good lawyer, because a lawyer right now would be great suited for you, just so that as you guys, you set up the book, you get in that process, you have someone that is protecting your interests, especially since you wrote the spec, but you wrote a spec based off of IP. So that has its own legality in itself. So you want to make sure you have someone. So I think that's a good start for your team, because then once you have a lawyer, the lawyer can then say, okay, great. Now I can go talk to my manager friends. And now because this person has a lawyer, one piece of the team always is helpful. So having like an entertainment attorney that would call one of us and say, hey, I have this great writer. We just did a deal for such and such. She wrote the spec for this IP. We just got it set up here. These are the producers. That for a manager is like, oh, okay, wow. So having a lawyer, one, it protects you. So you need to do that as you're going through this process, and just talking to some, because you base it off of IP. Because specking is one thing, but specking off of IP that someone else owns, there's, you can't take that away and be like, now this is mine, So you want to be protected in how they then pitch it and setting it up. But that person can then help you with the manager search.
Great answers. Thank you. Let's keep going with these questions. These are great questions. Free up mine, man. I'm throwing this phone away. I'm like, psh. Let's go. We've been on this side right here, gentlemen. Back, mustache. You, sir. Mustache game strong, buddy. I like it.
Thank you. Hi there. My name is Kian. I'm a writer director from Luxembourg. I flew all the way here a couple of days ago. Do you have any advice for filmmakers from overseas, specifically Europe, for example, who want to find agents or managers in the US? Are there any different considerations or challenges that they need to take into account?
Yes.
Have a car, sir.
No, yeah, well, I grew up in France, so a few of them, but no, a lot of time it's whether you already have representation in Europe or not. Obviously, Hollywood will work a lot with people in London, for example. So there's like agency in London that you work with that can actually be that bridge. Then you have that, or like they have a contact with agencies or management companies in the U.S. That makes a massive, massive, massive difference. I've found because you coming from Europe, pitching yourself directly to people here, they're going to ask, well, who are you repped with? What's going on in your career in Europe? And if it hasn't happened there, why? So like have already a body of work as well. You can't approach somebody. It's like, well, I made a movie in Luxembourg or a movie in France or whatever it is. Like I worked last year with a filmmaker that actually was working with Ramo Law. Like somebody mentioned Ramo, and they were at AFM and they were in post on this World War One movie, and the lawyer had seen it and signed him, and then introduced him to me, and I liked the film a lot, and I took a shot, and then we helped him do the distribution deal for the U.S. and we found an international sales agent and all this stuff, and got the movie released in the U.S. and got a great review in Variety and all this stuff, So, and he didn't have representation in Europe, but he was able to meet the right people at the American film market, and he just hustled like a crazy person, you know. But I would say really having a body of work already back home get you noticed, and people that can do that link, that makes also a massive difference.
Every agency has an international people who focus on international, and I see more managers now than ever before focusing on international as well.
Yeah, I have two actresses that I work with on a Persian short film that was nominated for an Oscar, or Persian foreign film that was nominated for an Oscar. It was uh, the the Sacred Seed of the Fig, and yeah, it's an amazing film. The actresses are phenomenal. This is two daughters, if you've seen the film, and the difficulties in particular are one of them doesn't speak any English. So when we had them over here, they were meeting with Netflix and whatnot. Developing projects for people who don't speak English is an obstacle, but it doesn't mean it's a hindrance or makes things impossible. In fact, international, as everyone is explaining, is very hot right now because those are huge audiences where influence matters. And what they're saying about making your influence and your mark back at home is exactly right. Because right now, everyone here at Holly Shorts, you're a part of a special group of people because you care. You care about film, you care about movies. That's why you're here. And that is a group of people that you will respect each other's opinions. You'll talk about films, you'll make friends, you'll make bonds. And if someone recommends something to watch, you probably will watch it because you're amongst this group and you have that influence to kind of talk to each other and present these ideas. Similarly, when you're coming from abroad, people don't know that many people from Luxembourg. I know two. And that, so like you can tell
Now
me
three.
now I know three, but now you can tell me you could have influence on me on what is hot, what works. Comedy is very hard to translate overseas, but comedy works everywhere. People like to laugh. So these are things that we're open to listen to, learn about. And again, if language is not the biggest barrier, it is one. But then the second is just, you have to really present why you are the authority on this or why you should be the person to speak on behalf of all of Luxembourg. Because if I randomly went to Luxembourg and told you this is what everyone in America does, why would you listen to that too? Right. So those are the challenges I would see for you. Thank you.
A lot of people would believe that, though. I've been in other countries. I'm like, this is how Americans are. They're like, really? I'm like, well, just my opinion, bro. Not everybody. This young lady here, you've been jumping up and down. What's your question? Here comes the microphone for you. There you go.
Hi, thank you guys. My name's Nikki Hevesy. I have a couple questions regarding packaging. So I'm somewhat well connected. I've been in LA for a while. So if you're out there setting meetings, like I'm thinking of a couple things. One, I was hired to write a feature film by an established producer. I don't own the IP, but I'm attached to it. And, I'm a little more aggressive than she is actually in packaging things. And then, in terms of approaching, and then just recently I pitched a series based on a documentary I did to Sony, and they're interested, but I need a showrunner. I'm not a showrunner. So in situations like that, I have an attorney that, can do contracts, but in that kind of a situation, is it appropriate to approach, say, Paradigm or a management company where we're looking for very specific, like black or brown showrunner or something like that, where there's already interest, or is it, wait till you go figure it out on your own and then come to us after you have the deal?
I would say, well, I think having a producer, I think you said you have a producer, but I think the okay, so on the feature, I think in terms of packaging, I always, as a manager, like if I have a client that has written a spec, we attach, and if I'm not producing it, we attach a producer. And I think having a producer with the ability and those relationships to be able to do that, I think is important. I think that's a big important piece, is like finding the right partner that can go out and be aggressive with you. And then, yeah, I think in that sense, it's you and that producer calling the agents and officially submitting scripts for clients. But I think it's important to, why I said it, emphasis on the producer, because I think you want someone that can get those calls answered, from managers and agents of these people. So I think having a strong producing partner is really important in packaging. And I'll just stop there.
You just want to be specific, whether the call is coming from you or it's coming from your lawyer or it's coming from your producer. Don't just go to a manager or an agent and be like, who do you have for this? Go, hey, I want XYZ client for this. And then they'll either say they're available in reading or not or whatever. But be very meticulous, because as soon as it feels like we have to do the producer's job for them, it's not a good way to get success, to find success.
We could probably squeeze in one more question. So the answers, well, let's keep them quick, but I do want to make sure we get one more in. This gentleman right here. Yeah. No, it's good. We need 2 hours for this panel, man.
First of all, thank you for being here, guys. I'm an actor, so question for actors. There's a lot of actors in the room. I've been really fortunate to hustle, like you were saying. Like my friends and I got together and we made 2 movies in the spring because I wasn't getting enough auditions as a lead actor.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And no, we asked people. We have a friend of a friend who did the graphics for Oppenheimer, and I said, hey, it's an 11-minute short film. Would you do the graphics for this? Yes. And it's like someone was casting for Grey's Anatomy for years, and they said, hey, listen, will you help us cast this? And she could have said, no, 15% of nothing is nothing, right? And she's like, I'm not doing anything. Sure, no problem. And so, and personally, I've done over 50 episodes with television as an actor. I'm a series regular on a animated show right now. All these things are happening. It's great, right? But in terms of, here's my struggle, is going in for, I was just on Matlock. I'm on Matlock now as a recurring character. I can't get to.
Child, you working?
I'm really.
You're going to stand up and.
You know what I like to call a working actor.
Here's
Can
the
I ask
issue.
you a question?
I
real quick?
can't get to this space of doing series regular auditions. I don't get in for them. I don't. It doesn't happen. And do I just say to my agents, like, look, I'm not going in for these roles anymore. I refuse. And then because that makes me so anxious, because I'm thinking I'm stepping away from work when no one knows my name, no one knows who I am. It's like I understand you have to have a name. It changes things, right? So what steps do I take, or do I just take that big jump and say no more? I'm just going in for the series regular roles or whatever that is.
It's a tricky moment because I think, as we've all been emphasizing, there's such a contraction of opportunities. And generally, as you all know, most of the people who are leads in series are already names. It's a tricky, tricky moment. So I think sometimes, first of all, don't talk to me about when you're eating. Don't talk to me about starvation, because that's great that you're recurring on a hot show, and maybe it's something where you've got to pull back. First of all, appreciate that, because that is freaking awesome.
100%.
I know people would kill you for that job right now. Literally, they're waiting outside. But the point is that, first of all, really count the blessings. They're amazing. But how are you and your team taking this success and putting it in front of people? Are they communicating it to heads of casting? As we're talking about, have you pinpointed who you want to work with? Because this is a very broad question. I always encourage people to narrow it down. Who the hell do you want to work with, and why do you want to work with them? I mean, really, why? What is it about that person whose creativity flips the switches in you? And what is it about you and your creativity that you can nail that belongs together and start communicating in a very specific way? I give people this exercise all the time. Name 10 directors you want to work with and why you want to work with them. Who are they? What are they? And what are you? And how does this belong together? 10 recent roles that are the kind of roles that you should be playing and why? Because if you say you want to be a series regular, I want to know why. Because what happens to me with that kind of information is I'm able to communicate who and what you are. And this thing has changed people's lives. I've had people do this where we've gotten every person on their list. We worked with them all because we were able to say this. One guy in particular wanted Steven Spielberg for a very specific set of reasons. I use these words. I talked to this casting director. She's like, wow, nobody ever thinks about, they just want a job. And instead of being just about him, it was about what he saw as a potential relationship. And she conveyed that to Mr. Spielberg, who was curious and brought him in. He got the damn job. The second time around, I called and pitched him, and they were like, "Oh yeah, and then he got that second job. The third time my phone rang, it was his office calling, saying, "We have a job. We'd like to bring him in to test with women who might be playing his wife." I'm like, "But he hasn't read for the job yet." They're like, "Oh no. Mr. Spielberg is giving him this job. We're testing the women opposite him." And this was over the course of 7 years, but it started with him nailing why he wanted the things he wanted, what specifically he wanted, because we don't need to waste our time on things you don't want. And get super specific about what you do want and empower us to actually go after those things with specific language, and that may change the course.
It's called The Secret.
It's called getting clear.
Steven Adams' Secret. Babacar?
No, just are we coming to an end here or what? Or
Oh, no, please.
no, like I was,
hold on.
there's
How much more time do we have?
We have just say what you got to say.
No, I realized because of stuff going on this weekend and people that are here, I wanted to tell the story that happened to me a few years ago when I was still running acquisitions for Voltage Pictures, film finance production company. One morning I got a call on my cell phone. I pick up and it happened to be Roy Lee. Now, Roy Lee, I'm not kind of exact how Roy calls, So I was like, hello. And he's like, oh, do you remember I'm Roy Lee? And I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. I know who you are. It's like, well, this agent gave me your number because it happens you were on a Zoom with some execs of mine 2 years ago. And he's like, look, I got this project on this writer-director. The studio already said no, so I can take it out. I got this French company that is putting half of the money, and I'm told that your company can put the other half and also sell against the rights or something like that. Is that something that you guys do? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what we do. Literally. He's like, okay, so I got this script. It's really bonkers. This writer director, I really believe in him. I think it's amazing. It's unlike anything I've read before. And I really believe in that guy. I think he's the future. He's like, look, I'm not always right, but I think I'm right 80% of the time. And I'm like, no, right. I think you're right. No problem. Like, he's like, so is that something you're interested in reading? Like, yeah, of course. Like, and do you think your boss, like Nicolas Chartier, like when will you be able to read? Like, he's gonna read it fucking tonight. Like, are you serious? Like, no, right. Like, if you send us a script, we're reading it tonight. We'll call you like first thing in the morning. So, oh, really? Okay, great, whatever. So he sent a script. It was Barbarian, my boss reads it. He calls me at 10 p.m. He's like, "What the fuck was this?" I'm like, "I know, it's crazy." He's like, "No, I mean, let's call in the morning and see how much they're looking for." And at the time, they were looking for $3 million. They were at $3 million, and we are going to make the deal with Vertigo and Borderlight and this French company. And then the person running the French company ended up passing away, so the project fell apart. And at the time, Chartier would not take the full risk, which I completely understand, because Barbarian was a really bonkers script on a kind of an unknown chance, But just to have Roy like call and say, "Hey, like I'm telling you, this guy is special. This project is going to work. I believe in it." He was able to go back and set it up
Was it?
at a studio.
You can't me.
then Weapons is coming out this weekend, and it was really like for me, like just remembering that story, being how like this young man had a champion that really believed in him, and was like, look, like I'm gonna get this made, and I'm telling you there's something about this person. So in your career, when you find somebody like that, even like your friends or people that you're working with, your relationships, like you never know what can happen later. And he was able to do that, and now you see like he has a movie opening at $40 million this weekend. It's pretty amazing.
And I'll just add one real quick thing, real quick, just because everything he said was right on, but I just wanted you to focus on one thing he said specifically, which two things he said specifically, which is like, yes, count your wins, because even when you get called back from a casting director, that's a huge win. But also, more so, he also mentioned the head of casting. So these networks, they're paying attention to you. So when you're recurring, they're not just like, who's this random guy? They're aware of you. It's their job to be aware of who you are. So you're probably at the point where you're supposed to be meeting with them and then having them have ideas for you on other projects, and that could lead to what you're looking for.
I asked my agent. I say, "Can you set up?"
No, they're probably on it, but yeah.
No, absolutely ask. I am a big believer in closed mouths don't get fed. I always am like tell my I'm always telling my clients what I want to do for them, but I'm like okay, I always have a monthly meeting with my clients like what are the things that we're wanting to do. And so I think it's a disservice to you to not to the person that has your career in their hands like all that they could say is if you say, "Hey, I would love to meet with, I've been on CBS for this long. I've been on Matlock. I would love to meet with Claudia and her team," and they could say, "Okay, great, we got the meeting," or "We sent materials. We're gonna try and get it." But like, you got to say something, right? Because they may not be thinking like that, and then you may see, "Oh, this actually probably isn't the best partnership." For me, because they're not thinking entrepreneurially about how they can elevate me within the broadcast system.
I wasn't trying to talk shit about your.
Sorry,
No,
sorry. And I'm not either. I'm not either.
You're not recording, right? You're not recording.
Sorry.
No,
Not a
no,
shit talker.
no names,
No.
no names,
She's right.
no names
She's
have
right.
been named.
She's
But
right.
I would say also sometimes
You're gonna
like,
get me in trouble, Steven. He's waving me.
I
off.
know. Well,
Well.
we'll have a fight over
With
there.
Steve.
But sometimes I go through all that, like we were talking about. I go through all these submissions, and they go, "Great, I saw it, thank you." And I thought, fuck you. I spent a lot of time putting this shit together, and my clients worked really hard, and you better what? But then a few months later, here comes this audition.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they just need to do their jobs. They don't have time to put a bow on it, but they are paying attention.
So thank you everybody up here for being here and sharing and being vulnerable and opening up and how you run and answering the questions thoroughly. Thank you all for being here, for supporting HollyShorts, 21 years. I mean, we could have kept going, right? Like there's so many wonderful things we can all talk about. So, but just continue to strive, keep moving, keep grinding, have a positive mindset. And also, and I do believe in this, I'll close with this, is just sit in gratitude. Really, like water your own lawn. Stick with the gratitude what you have and keep working because we're all in it together. Trust me.
Yeah, to those of you who have a movie and festival this week, best of luck and already congratulations and hope it goes great.
Yes. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the Agents and Managers panel. If you could please step on out if you want to speak with the panelists, you can talk with them